Hi everyone, today I'm doing a video that is a little bit different from our usual stuff. You see, last week we issued our membership report for the third quarter of 2022. And we also asked our members to vote on some sticky questions that we felt needed some input. So in this video, I'll be presenting the report as well as reviewing the results from the vote and also answering the questions that we've gathered from YouTube, Discord and our email. And to do it in Mossy Earth style, because this is a Mossy Earth video, I'm gonna go and set up somewhere here in the forest and get started. Okay, so this is a much better setting, I think. If we're going to be talking about reports, better to be outside in a nice forest here in Denmark and to, enjoy the sound of the leaves and the wind while I'm telling you all about Mossy Earth's very exciting numbers. So let's start with the membership report. The membership report it goes into quite a bit of depth, but I think if you want to get a simple overview of it, the front page is the way to go. We have 4 stats there that tell everything you need to know. So in the third quarter of 2022, so that is July, August, September, we grew by 2,571 members, which is a 97% jump. So we almost doubled in members. And we'll get more into like how that happened in a little bit. But yeah, this is great news. And with all these new members, many among you who are watching this video, thank you so much for joining our membership. We managed to raise £175,000, which these days is almost the same in dollars and in euros, given the market turbulence. So these £175,000, 80% of it will be used directly into projects. So this is hiring staff to work on the ground. So this is straight to biologists, project expenses such as all the materials, all the machinery, whatever is required, the transport, etc. So that is £140,000 towards that. And then the remainder, £35,000 or 20%, is used for Mossy Earth's running costs. So essentially that is the salary of the people that do not work directly on projects. So essentially people who help us with our website or that communicate with you, many of our members, to answer a lot of your inquiries and so on. And many of you, we got a few emails of people pointing out that they felt that how could we run a 10-person organization with £35,000 for a quarter? It doesn't leave a lot of money to pay salaries, no matter where you are in at least the Western world. And the thing here is, and this is the first thing to clear up, is that this report here is only about the Mossy Earth membership. So it does not include other parts, such as our business partnerships. And that also really helps us with the running costs of Mossy Earth. Maybe in the next report, we'll try to include all of that. This time it was just too many numbers to process, and we thought people were more interested to know what their own money is doing. So that out of the way, this is the report. We hope you found it useful. And now let's get a little bit into sort of the nitty-gritty of how things developed. So the first part is this jump in members, this increase in fundraising. So we have finally hit 5,000 members, which is an absurd number, and I'm really, really excited to reach this milestone. And as I told you before, this was a 97% jump from July until now, the start of October. And this was all due to YouTube. I think it was mostly due to YouTube. It will come as, it won't come as much of a surprise to many of you that have seen how our channel has developed on YouTube over recent months, but we've found something. People have found our videos exciting, and the YouTube algorithm has essentially blessed us with a lot of promotion across people's home pages. So essentially our videos have been getting a lot of views, and that has been really exciting because for many years we've been doing these projects without all this exposure and having trouble finding new members, and now we found our voice. And that has meant that these rewilding projects that are quite complex and have these different stories that are not as simple to tell as, hey, we're planting this many thousand trees, we found a way to tell the stories about those rewilding projects, and that has been the shift here. That has been the change. And because of that, we got 6.6 million views in the third quarter of 2022, and we got 88,000 new subscribers to our YouTube channel. And all of this led to a lot of attention to our website and our membership, which of course then led to all these new members joining. And in addition to that, I know that so many of you also, and I've been keeping an eye on these numbers as well, refer other people. So they say, hey, you know, they talk with a friend and they say, hey, have you heard of this Mossy Earth thing? I have a referral code, go check them out. And many people signed up that way as well. So it's these two things, but the big jump has been because of YouTube. So now we get into the nitty-gritty of the report. And the thing is, our calculations can't be simple because we're trying to do something specific here, which is people who contribute to Mossy Earth and who see what pops up on their account. You contributed to, you know, kelp reforestation, you've contributed to restoring wetlands in the floodplains of the Danube. Projects like that, and when it pops up in your account, we really mean it. That month, you've contributed to that project. And for that to work, we need to do a lot of maths here. So when we have yearly memberships, so people who come in and immediately pay for a yearly membership, we distribute the spending of this yearly amount by every month, so that effectively every month you're contributing to a different project. We're diversifying your impact. If we simply spend all the money straight away, one, it would make it harder for us to have a bit more cash flexibility, but two, it would also mean that all the money could go to a single project and you wouldn't be supporting all the projects throughout the whole year that we're showing you in our account. And for us, it's really important to show you the correct thing. And that's what you see in your Mossy Earth membership account matches with the reality of what we're actually doing. So to calculate the amount of money that we spend towards rewilding each month, we essentially have to look at how many annual memberships we got, remove that money, and then divide that by 12 and add it back in. And that money will then sort of be added all over the next few months. And then the same happens with gift memberships, because those are also annual. So in the third page of the report, you will see a lot of these calculations, essentially. So it is about the yearly memberships and the gift memberships. And then we also have to deduct from that overall number the processing fees and the extra contributions. The number I gave you at the cover was already without processing fees. So it did not include the £7,000 or the 3.91% fee that PayPal or Stripe, which is how we process credit cards, charges. So essentially we're counting from the money that actually reaches us. Otherwise it'd be really hard to make things work. And then also separate from this number are the extra contributions. So recently we launched this option for members to pay for extra trees to be planted in places like, or currently just Iceland actually. And that money is going 100% towards impact, not just 80%. So we wanted to separate it because we want every member to get to 80% impact. And then in addition to that, we have this 100% for people who contributed extra. So that is sort of the third and the fourth page of the report. And then we get sort of to this split of how this money will be spent. As you can see, the bulk of the money will go towards reforestation. Essentially we'll use £50,000 or to plant about 58,000 trees, which is pretty efficient. I think we got to a pretty good efficiency in our tree planting projects. And then £36,788.71 will go towards our rewilding projects. So that is stuff like the restoration of the wetlands, the kelp, and so on. And then the final portion is about 17% or £18,000 will go towards project management costs. So this is staff that we hire to run the projects, you know, whether it be our biologists that are working on the project or consultants or advisors, essentially all those sort of costs come from that as well. So then also just touching briefly on the extra fundraising, so the money paid for extra trees to be planted in Iceland, so that's something that we launched recently, will go 100% to impact, which means when you look at the quarter as a whole, removing the processing fees, 81.3% of the money that landed in our hands will go towards impact, which I think is really exciting and also a really fair number that's required quite a bit of work for us to get to this stage. So I'm quite excited about that. And then the next part of the report briefly lays out, in not that much detail yet, how we plan to spend this money sort of moving forward, because we have some new ideas and we'll be running these by you, and we did run these by you in the vote, but we'll be going more in depth in the next vote. But for now, we have this idea of splitting our rewilding expenses in the following way. 70% will go for ecosystem-wide projects. So these are projects which focus on an ecosystem function to impact a whole process and or a function in the ecosystem, and then unlock a cascade of positive change. So this essentially is what we view as the bang for your buck among projects. So we put, let's take the example of the wetlands. That is an ecosystem project. We dug a large trench to reflood an area that has not been flooding because of a changed water regime, because of a dam, and we've unlocked this whole sort of change in the ecosystem where the fish that previously used those forests, those floodplain forests as nurseries, and now didn't have access to them, now they have their access again, and all these species that then benefit from preying on those fish, and all the insect life, and all that then will be sort of food for the birds, and so on. So all of this sort of explosion of life comes from one intervention that really changes the whole ecosystem. This is what we think is the most important part of our rewilding work, which is why it's 70% of our expenses. But we also think it's worth it to work on projects which focus a bit more on restoring a specific population. So a good example of this is the work that we've done with the snails. The snails in the Desertas Islands, in the Portuguese islands in the middle of the Atlantic. So these snails were going extinct, and they're not important to the ecosystem. They're not going to change, a whole ecosystem by staying alive. Our intervention there is purely to stop them from disappearing. Some people have mentioned to us, and we got quite a bit of feedback saying that they felt it was not as well spent as the ecosystem-wide stuff. But at Mossy Earth, we believe in this sort of nice, diverse diet of projects, if that makes sense. So the idea being that we have this variety of projects which allows you to have a diversified impact across many different places in many different ways, ensuring that in the long run you're going to have a significant impact in restoring wilderness, in making the whole landscape wilder. So we think it's important to also include these things. But 15% of the rewilding budget will go towards conservation. So these projects that are more targeted at a specific species. And the final 15% will go to projects that we are calling our sort of incubator fund. So these are for projects that try to innovate and test interventions that then aim to sort of restore ecosystems at scale. So it's our sort of like little experimentation lab. And among those, I'd say like the one that you will be seeing more about on YouTube in the future is our termites project, for an instance, where we are looking at the relationship between termites and trees to help restore or at least stop desertification in Benin. It's the kind of project where we're not 100% sure if this is a way to restore more forests there, or at least to stop desertification, but it is a really interesting opportunity, and we want to fund some of the early stage research on that front. So 15% of the budget will go to that. Now, in the next time I make this video, and the next time you will have a vote and a report, we will try to be more specific about what projects are we planning to fund without, too many spoilers. We'd like to, keep things exciting as well. But we'll try to go into a little bit more depth as to, what we might be funding in the months to come. And yeah, in the final pages of the report, essentially you just see the appendix with a bunch of definitions and also this quarter's expenses. So you'll look at these and see that, hey, these don't add up. Essentially the money that we put towards impact isn't the money we spend that quarter. Otherwise we'd be really fast at spending the money. Because first we need to, of course, find the projects, and that takes time, and we'll talk more about our project selection criteria a little bit later. But essentially what you see here is are the expenses that were made during this quarter. And eventually, when you look at the reports over the next few months and years, you will see that, of course, then it adds up. When you look at it over the course of a year or a year and a half, you will see that the numbers will be correct then. Okay, it's getting a little bit cold, so I'm gonna put something on, and maybe it's also getting quite dark, so I might change some settings. Okay, much better. I was actually quite cold by this point. So now let's look at the results from the membership vote. So this is something that we used to do a few years ago. We would ask members to vote between different projects, but what that essentially meant was that we had to research all the projects, like we had to fully research 3 projects, and then ask our members to choose between them. And that was rather problematic because we came up always with 3 ideas that we really liked, and then we only implemented 2 of them because we had sort of scarce resources. But researching the other 2 felt kind of wasteful. So we switched from that essentially to what you've known so far, which is essentially we just implement as many projects as we can, and we don't sort of waste time generating options that we're not going to pursue. But we really want to involve members by asking your opinion on different topics. And some people have told us, you guys should know best, do your thing, don't ask me. And I think that's okay. If people who don't want to have a say, that's fair. We understand that. Also, I imagine you're busy, so not everybody's got time to read reports and vote on things and so on. But nevertheless, we wanted to ask some questions. We want to do this on a regular basis. So we will be doing this essentially every quarter. And I'm quite excited about it because we can ask many questions and tweak the process bit by bit to ensure that, you know, you really have a say in what we do here at Mossy Earth, because it's your money. And we're trying to do something good with it, but we also want to understand what you want from us. We know what we want. We want to make the landscape wilder, but there's different ways to approach this. So there's some questions essentially that we feel are important to ask. So that being said, looking now at the vote results, which by the way, you will also have received a beautifully illustrated PDF made by Ria in your inbox with the vote results, so you can look at them yourself as this video is going. You can see that essentially we validated the votes, so we matched this against our database of members, and we only had 24 invalid votes out of 932 votes cast. So that's quite okay, 2.5%. And that is essentially people who put a wrong email that essentially didn't match with our email. Maybe next time, be sure that you use that email. We might try to do something so you don't have to do that, but anyway, it's pretty good. 97.42% of the votes were valid. So the next question we asked you was whether you knew or if you were aware that we spend 80% of our money towards impact. And well, I'm glad we asked because 64% of you did not know that. And of course, that's our fault. We haven't talked about it that much. It's actually something we've been doing for a while now. That percentage has been creeping up, but it's reached 80 already quite a few months ago. So yeah, it's our bad. Our apologies for that, for not communicating that correctly, but hopefully that's rectified now, and we'll try to increase it and make it clearer in the communications in our website and so on, and in our videos, etc. So then we asked you whether you approved of the membership report, of the membership report for the 3rd quarter of 2022. We had 907 votes, 905 of them said yes, and 2 said no. The people that said no, one didn't leave a comment, and the other one said, "I didn't read it." If I have my notes, if my notes are correct, these results are a little bit, how do I put this? Putin-like, North Korea-like. 99.78% is not a discussion. It's not a good debate. Of course, we're really happy that you approve of what we do. But I think we need to find more relevant questions to ask you, or make the report more accessible, or ask you more granular questions. Perhaps this was a silly question. But we're glad that you approve of our report, nevertheless. So then we asked you whether you approved of our proposed spending priorities for the rewilding budgets. And 98.67% of you said yes. So that's 893 votes yes. Then 12 votes no, so that is 1.33%, and 905 votes were cast in total for this question. So here the no answers had some good points, but points that we had considered already. Predominantly the no's were about us putting too much money towards conservation, so the percentages not being the way that they thought was best. So the most consistent answer, because then when people vote no, we ask them, why do you think that? The most consistent answer was, I think you should put all the money towards the ecosystem projects. And some people had like, don't spend money on conservation, just do the incubator instead. And then there were some people also saying that maybe we should do a little bit more of the conservation side, perhaps confusing a little bit because conservation is kind of a classical word. We're happy with the percentages right now, and it seems most of you approve. And I think this will become a lot clearer in the next report we produce, and in the next time we have this conversation. I think you'll understand much better where we are trying to go with this, essentially. So then we asked you, in which territory would you like Mossy Earth to focus? And this was one that I was really curious about, because I think we have quite a widespread membership base. And I expected to see a little bit more in the US here as well, or North America. But the overwhelming majority was Europe. So out of the 841 people that answered this question, 543 said Europe, so that's 64% for Europe, 13% for Africa, 9% for South America, 7% for North America, 4% for Asia, and 1.43% for Central America. And I made the questions for this late in the day. I forgot Oceania, like Australia and New Zealand. I'm really sorry about this, because I know we have many members from Australia and New Zealand. It's my bad. Maybe you are the missing people that decided not to answer this question, that decided to boycott it. My apologies about that. I'll try to ask more specific questions the next time. And of course, maybe I'll ask an Australian only question. I'm sorry about that, in New Zealand, of course. Anyway, this is interesting. Most of our projects are in Europe. I guess most of our members are in Europe. Most people want a project in Europe. And most of the team's Europe-based. So that is, I think, where the focus will remain. But we really want to have projects in a variety of locations. It's this nice diversity of impact that I think is important. And I think the logical steps are for us to have further American projects, because we have so many members there. But based on your feedback, it could also be interesting to look at the prospects of having another African project, because of course we have the project in Benin. The thing is, we like to be there at our projects. We're not just moving money or throwing it around, you know, or something like this. Our biologists are involved in the project, so we need a very direct relationship if we're working with a partner, or we're just doing it ourselves. And for both of these things, we need to set up proper infrastructure. So for us to expand past Europe will be, or to have a lot more projects away from Europe will be a bit more work. I think it's worthwhile, but just to let you know, this will be a slow process, but it was still very interesting to know. And then we asked you a question that I was really curious about, because you see, I have to go to all our projects by train, or I have been going to all our projects by train, except Iceland, because the boat was like 4 days and it was half €1,000 or something like this, insane like that. So we asked you, were you aware we travel to all our projects by train or car only? And 20% of you said yes, or 21% of you said yes, and 78 or 79% of you said no. That's really interesting. That means I've been because I've included briefly in some of the videos, but I guess we don't mention it much on the website. And yeah, no, we've been going by train all the time. Sometimes it takes me 4 days to get to, say, a project in Romania or something like that. The question which you asked next was also quite important, which was, how important is it to you that we avoid flying to travel to a project? So essentially, we've been doing this whole effort. How important is it to you? The average result, so is on a scale from 0 to 10. The average result was 5.8. I want to interpret this as it's reasonably important. It's important. You should take it in mind, but it's not like so essential. So there was like a very strange distribution of votes, slightly skewed towards people finding it more important. But for instance, the most votes were on 8. After that, it was 7 with 100. Oh no! So after that was 5, and after that it was 7. So, and then we had a lot of people vote 0, and we had a discussion with the team, because the reason why we want to ask you this is because we've been straining ourselves to go everywhere by train, but there are some places that are best for us to go by plane. It would just make it a lot easier. It would save us like 5 days of travel. Sometimes it would be almost as sort of environmentally friendly. We don't travel that frequently because our staff is usually local to the projects. So yeah, the way we're going to interpret this and the way we've discussed it with the team is that we will take flights sometimes, very rarely, when it makes a lot more sense to do so versus taking the train, when the train option is really complicated for us. So I hope that makes sense to you. Well, I guess most of you didn't really know we're going everywhere by train, but we're trying to find the balance here. So we'll be sticking close to what we've been doing so far. I'm going to Slovakia and to Romania soon. I'll be going to Portugal. I'll probably be going most of those places by train, but there'll be some exceptions along the way. And yeah, just to let you know that that's our new policy. So then the next question which we asked you was whether we should update our membership prices to keep up with inflation. I mean, as most of you will know, inflation's going crazy, like 8%, and that means our costs at the projects are also going up, right? And the way we were thinking about this was perhaps we could increase the membership. But here so essentially we had 898 votes. 609 people said yes, and 290 said yes, no. So 32% said no. This is a significant portion. And then we asked the question, so why do you say no? And a lot of people said, well, this is a contribution that I can give. Inflation also affects me. So if I want to give more, I'll increase my membership. And that makes absolute sense. I think that sort of cleared the argument for us. So what we might do to find the balance here is essentially increase the prices of some of our newer memberships, or just for new people that are going to come in. And you might wonder sort of, why does it matter? Well, it's because we try to plant 4 trees per membership, right? So we have sort of a fixed cost and the price for that is rising. And we're wanting to put more money towards rewilding, not just reforestation. So essentially, if that cost keeps going, up and up and up, then we will struggle more to fund our rewilding projects, which are the ones that excite us the most. So yeah, it's I think it's a good answer that people gave us. They said, don't go updating our memberships. If we want to increase our memberships, we will, but go ahead and increase it for new members. And that's what we're going to do with that. So I hope that makes sense. Happy to hear more comments on that, of course, but that is what we agreed with the team. So then the next question was about land ownership. So we've been thinking of using the membership funds to create wilderness reserves. This process involves buying land. Do you approve of the idea of using membership funds to buy land? 792 people said yes, 106 said no. So that is 88% said yes and 11% said no. This was also an interesting question. I was really curious to see what most people would think. We also know that it could be quite wasteful to just go and buy land. There's plenty of places that have land that need money to finance projects. So it could be quite wasteful for us to then try to do both things, to go buy the land, and while we could just simply be putting the money towards actual activities on land that is already or can already be dedicated towards rewilding. And the best way I can answer this is that we believe that we can generate a lot of projects in a single area by having a piece of land. Mossy Earth does not own any land. We work with different private partners. We work with sometimes in public land if there's like a management agreement. But we've not ever purchased a piece of land. And the idea really here is to have a few biologists there and that we could try to do something concrete to bring an area that's rather degraded into a really nice wilderness, and then to essentially use that project a bit as a model, but also to give us the opportunity to do to have us as a good local base, as the core for our activities in a given area. Now, with this feedback, I think a decent amount of people said no, and then they justified it by saying that it was wasteful. And we agree. We understand that. We're not going to put the majority of the membership's money towards buying land ever. But we think we might look at buying strategic pieces of land, perhaps near areas where we have a lot of projects, to have a bit of that base, to be able to run some projects in our own piece of land, but not go with this idea of buying, hectares and hectares and hectares of land to create huge wilderness reserves. It'll probably be more strategic than that. It'll probably be a bit smaller, a bit leaner, and a bit more efficient. So I hope that we've listened to you there and that makes sense. because we think that strikes a nice balance between our needs to have that base and to generate projects, and the feedback that we got about the efficiency of how we're spending this money. Then we asked you to pick your favorite projects. I'm not going to get too much into this because we were just curious to hear, but we asked about your favorite reforestation project. Iceland came out at #1. Reforesting the floodplain forests in Slovakia came out as #2, and then the Caledonian woodland in Scotland #3, and so on and so. I was quite curious about this because one of my favorite projects, reforesting the Southern Carpathian Mountains, was the penultimate one with only 123 votes and 8% of the total, and I think that's like a fantastic project where we're working on arguably Europe's like wildest landscape. But perhaps it hasn't been on the channel so much. I think a lot of people that have come recently have come through YouTube and have seen, you know, our floodplain videos, so hence they're really interested in reforestation in the floodplain forest. But I'm going to be going to Romania and telling you a lot more about what we're doing there in the next few months. So I'm really curious to see whether your opinion will shift. Besides that, I don't have much to add. I think a lot of people are excited about Iceland, and rightfully so. It's a very interesting place to plant. And yeah, we very much look forward to doing more and more projects there and to try to scale this up. Then on the rewilding side of things, there was no surprise. A lot of people came in really excited about our project to restore wetlands in the floodplain forest. So essentially flooding a forest to restore wetlands in the inland delta of the Danube in Slovakia. That project is really unique and it's so exciting, and we'll be doing some really cool things very similar to that in the near future. And yeah, it's also a project that excited me so much, and a great partner that we work with there, and everything's worked so awesome. We're really happy that you like that project. And then what excited me also is that the position 2 and 3 were our 2 kelp projects. So first it was the trial project where we tried a certain technique, and then the green gravel stuff that we are doing to try to scale up kelp production and kelp restoration in Portugal. And I thought, you know, I've always thought that's like so exciting. I'm a surfer. I really like to be in the ocean, and I'm a diver as well. I really love diving, and both free diving and scuba diving. So for me, the idea of being able to restore something in the ocean is really attractive. So I'm happy that people think so too. It's, I think, a really exciting thing. And I think the rest of the team also agrees. We'll be posting the full results, and you'll have them in the PDF because we have, like, of course, another 20, 30 projects on this list. But it was really interesting to see. So thank you for letting us know. So that essentially completes the votes section of this video. And now I'll be moving on to questions that we have gathered both on YouTube. So essentially we asked people to submit questions through a community post, and then we also asked this on Discord, and Tim gathered some from our email that we have received sort of over the last few months. So I'll try to answer quite a few. It's getting a bit dark. I've left this for late in the day because I've been busy at work. But I'll try to answer as many questions as I can and go through them in a bit of depth. Okay, I've adjusted the ISO of my camera a little bit, so hopefully you'll still be able to see me even if the sun's already set and it's just getting darker and darker. So let's get into the questions that you've asked. One of the first ones that I want to address, because this is the main question that we get everywhere, is can I volunteer? Can I help? Can I do something on the ground? And I completely understand this. Rewilding is about, for me, it's a lot about something tactile, you know, it's about what's happening on the ground. How can we make the wilderness, how can we make the landscape wilder? And I think that people just want to do something on the ground. I think it's really exciting to hear that. That being said, the answer that we've often given is we don't have the infrastructure to manage so many people, and projects happen in sort of brief moments in time where we need a specialized team to be there, usually professional, whether they be conservation biologists or professional tree planters or anything in between. We usually work with professionals on that, and it's really hard to then say or justify the idea of saying, hey, come from, let's say, England to Portugal, or go from, you know, Denmark to Romania to do a bit of tree planting, because it's more transport. We use local teams, you know, so we put money into the local economy. We work with professionals that immediately do a good job, and that's the way we've been doing things, and it just made sense so far. That being said, we really want to do something about this, because people wanting to do something is impacts that we're leaving on the table. If we're not enabling you to do something with that energy that you want to put into restoring nature, then I think we're failing as well. So this is something we've been looking into and we've been thinking, because it's clearly a pain point that has been, you know, that people have come to us so many times saying, please, 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 let me do something. And what we've come up with as the first solution is looking at the idea of creating a course, or creating sort of more educational content that will be available to you as members, of course, teaching you on how to do something at a local level. So we want to empower you with knowledge. And this way, essentially, you are your own volunteer. You don't need us to say, hey, come here on this day, go dig this hole. No, we want to provide you with the understanding, the knowledge required to understand your local area and to assess what kind of projects you could join, how to look at those projects, how to navigate sort of making a change at a local level. What are the types of projects that are easy to get off the ground if you don't have much time to be involved in them, and so on. So I hope that's a solution. And if anyone else has additional thoughts on this, please let me know. But we think we might be able to do some meetups and some sort of volunteer days, and we do them, for instance, for our project to remove invasive plants in Portugal. And that's been going great and it's super practical, but these will be sporadic and they won't, I don't think they'll be available to all members. And again, as I mentioned, we don't want people to travel from super far away to do them either. So yeah, we have to find that balance. So whenever those exist, I think we will announce them. But in general, our solution will be to find something where we can empower you with knowledge so you can go do the things on the ground, and you can become your own Mossy Earth. And hopefully maybe you can connect us with really good projects too, or maybe you start your own project and we can fund your work. These are ideas that we are really serious about. So we'll let you know more about this when it starts becoming more of a reality and we've scoped out exactly what this will be, but that's the solution we've come up with. And we're really curious to think, sort of, please let me know in the comments, what do you think about that? Is it a good idea? Is it a good solution, or should we consider some other way of engaging people in these activities? Another question that we've been asked a lot is, how do we pick our projects? The main thing is, I would describe as roughly as bang for your buck. So we have a very limited budget. We're a small organization. Even if we have our amazing 5,000 members, we have to be really efficient with our money. And we're doing, essentially what we're trying to do is to put this money towards a project and extract as much rewilding out of it as we can. So that's why we look at working with keystone species, where, for instance, let's say reintroducing water voles to an area means that they will help essentially improve a whole ecosystem, because they act on that ecosystem, because they have an outsized impact on that ecosystem. Or essentially taking advantage of trophic cascades, or projects that when they reach a certain tipping point, like the kelp, when it reaches a certain tipping point, there's a kelp forest there that is a nursery for small fish. These are the kinds of projects that we look for the most, and why we put 70% of our money towards these impact projects. So, as I said, we split currently 70% towards ecosystem projects, 15% towards the conservation projects, and 15% towards the incubator projects. Then there's one more part where we've been asked, so I'm trying to sort of like get all the project questions together, is whether we do most of the projects or whether we get people to do most of the projects. Of course, we mention our partners when we make a video and a project with our partners, and rightfully so, because we're tapping into their work and their knowledge and their network. So the answer to this, it's split. We have some projects which we run ourselves. It's Mossy Earth biologists running the project from the beginning to the end, maybe with a bit of advice where it is required. And then we have the other projects where we work with a partner organization or with a partner researcher or partner university, or in whichever setting or setup we work. We always have one of our own biologists assigned to that project. So they're working with the biologists in the other team on a detailed management plan. They're checking in frequently on how things are progressing. And of course, we're visiting the projects as well to see things for ourselves and be involved at key points. So the answer is, how involved are we in our projects? Like, really involved. Sometimes we're so involved in a project with our partners that it almost feels like our own. And that's really important for us. Now, in the future, we want to increase the amounts that we do fully ourselves, hence us looking, at things like buying land and so on. But yeah, for now, we're really happy with the mix because we're tapping into local networks. These organizations have often dealt with things like bureaucracy with local government and so on. So they've already tackled a lot of these issues. So we don't have to go reinvent the wheel and tackle all those issues by ourselves. We can essentially tap into the work they've done and come in and put our money towards something really impactful straight away. So the next question I have is also about projects. Have any projects gone wrong? I don't think wrong, I would say. But of course, and we've put this in YouTube videos in the past. For instance, our kelp restoration trial didn't succeed in producing kelp. The approach was wrong, but that's why it was a trial as well. So arguably, we succeeded in that one because we learned something was not going to work and we didn't waste money scaling it up. We found a new idea that we were really excited about, and that one we are scaling up. So is that a failure? Not 100% sure. More recently, we've told you about a project we've done with kestrels as well. And the 2 GPS tags on the kestrels that first brought so much exciting data to us about this new behavior with a juvenile essentially going straight to the mountains and hunting there in its first year of life. But now the 2 GPS loggers have switched off on both birds, which is quite annoying. And I think the GPS company might have some angry emails from our biologists about this. But yeah, you could argue that's a bit of a failure. Then again, we gathered unique new data. So is it a failure? I don't know. So, we try to learn from our mistakes, but if we ever fail massively, you're going to know about it. Because we're here to tell you what happens with the money with your money that we put towards our projects. If something goes wrong, you're going to hear about it. So I cannot think of any other one that went really wrong, but I will let you know maybe in comments or something if I can think of something. So another question that we had, and that's been heard a few times, is like, who's the team behind Mossy Earth, and what are your qualifications? We're a really wide mix. Myself, I don't have any backgrounds in biology. I studied economics. I used to make some YouTube videos, and I've learned a lot about rewilding the last 6 years. But that's not my background. And then Matt, who started Mossy Earth with me, he's like a Swiss Army knife of backgrounds. He's had 50 jobs in the past, traveled the world doing different things. So yeah, Matt's done every job that you can imagine. So he's got all the backgrounds. And then we have, of course, there's many different people in our team, so I won't talk about all of them right now, but I'd say for probably this question was concerned whether we're qualified to work on these projects. We hire conservation biologists for this. They went to university, studied biology, ecology, and so on. And we're currently hiring more biologists as we speak. So yeah, that's the team behind the projects. I think if you want to go see the team itself, you can go on our team page on Mossy Earth. I hope we have everyone and it's updated there. But there you should be able to see everyone that works here. We're a 10-person team currently, and looking to hire a few more people to increase our impact, and specifically biologists. And another question that we've had is, now that we're growing, are we going to keep our small team, or are we going to try to grow the team a lot? That's not the point. We want to be a small, lean organization achieving a lot with our money. So the goal is to essentially hire the people that we need, which usually will be more and more biologists to run more and more projects, but keep the rest of the team as lean as we can to make it really efficient how we use your money, essentially. Another question that we got associated with this sort of team aspect was whether the membership had to pay for the YouTube videos and the making of the YouTube videos. And that's something I'm quite happy about, which is that currently the money that we get from YouTube pretty much pays some months, most months, it pays, and this is money that we get through the ads on YouTube, you know, that everybody gets. It pays for most of the video team, really. So it pays for the time of the editors, it pays for some of the camera equipment that we use, it pays for, you know, microphones and things like that. And yeah, and also sometimes travel, so train tickets to go to projects, etc. So it's been really efficient in that way. And the YouTube team currently is self-contained, and that's really neat. And we hope to keep it that way, or perhaps even increase that further, so we can use the money from YouTube, for instance, also on our projects or something like that. But for now, YouTube is self-contained, and we're really happy about that. So it doesn't have to come from just general Mossy Earth running costs. Now, another question that we've heard a fair bit is, why did we start Mossy Earth? And for me, I think it's, I used to work at different startups. I think Matt had a bit of a background in permaculture and so on, and that's his connection to it. For me, I just wanted to create an organization where I could think of all the problems from scratch and try to solve all those problems and have it be something that I'm really excited to do. And the only thing I could see that I was excited about was to do something that would make the landscape wilder. And then we stumbled upon Rewilding, and that was just mind-blowing, because it was so exciting to to look at the problem in a positive way, not to just say, oh, everything is being destroyed, we're losing all these species, all this forest is disappearing, and it is a huge problem. But it is just exciting to look at the landscape and say, hey, we can make it wilder. To have that excitement of, there is the opportunity to make this land here richer in biodiversity than it was 200 years ago. So that to me is just so exciting, and that's what gets me up in the morning to make these projects and to work at Mossy Earth. And yeah, for me the inspiration has been like the start of this rewilding movement that we've seen a lot in Europe. Not the I think in America sometimes rewilding has a different meaning, where it's like people going into the woods and connecting with the trees and so on. We're more focused on the idea of increasing biodiversity and wild ecosystems in the landscape, although the other stuff is cool too, of course. But yeah, for us it's been this rewilding movement that has been quite focused in Europe for now, I think, of yeah, looking at the landscape in a different way, of saying it could become more than it is currently and than it was in the past, and not just recent past, like also distant past. So that's really cool. So another question we've been asked is if we think it's feasible for us to have projects closer to urban areas. That would perhaps also make it easier for people to work there. Yeah, I think this is a big possibility. We just need to find the right project. We haven't found the right one yet, so we don't have a lot of projects very close to cities. But yeah, if you have any suggestions, we are really happy to take them into account and to run them by our biologists and see whether we can set up a cool project close to an urban area. Because there's biodiversity there too. It's really worth it. And I know actually Paul, one of our team members, he lives in London and he's involved in, or at least he visits and goes to like volunteering days in a lot of rewilding projects around London. And I think he thinks it's brilliant, and I agree, they're super cool projects. So I think it's well worth you looking into your local area. And at Mossy Earth, if you have any suggestions, please let us know. It needs to make sense. It needs to be worth it for us to fund. You know, often urban areas are better funded than rural areas, and there's more impact to be had in rural areas. But if you have something, please let us know. I think it would be a really great opportunity for us. So one question we had was whether we were planning to make more marine projects, such as coral restoration. I'm a diver. I did my dive master in Indonesia, and I've done so much diving and seeing coral. And it's, I think, if you enjoy wildlife, seeing, you know, species, different species of animal interact and so on, and like natural processes and everything. You go to a coral reef in a tropical country, and you just see everything happen in front of you. Fish eating each other, fish eating the coral, this and that. You know, everything's happening, and it's so wonderful. And it's, I would just love to have a project like that. So coral restoration has been on the list. Now, most of us don't live next to places where we can do coral restoration, but we've been approached by a few organizations keen to do some stuff like that, and we'll be looking into it. I really would like to have a coral project, so I have a personal investment in this idea going ahead. If you have, again, any connections, please let us know. Shoot us an email at team@mossy.earth, and we'll be really happy to look into it and see what projects we can set up. So another question associated with volunteering was, what are your recommendations for people that want to make a personal difference, that want to get involved with rewilding themselves, other than being a member, of course? And we're trying to do the course around this, or provide educational material to you. But what I could say for now is that I think the best you can do is look at what local organizations exist in your area and see if there's anything really interesting where you could lend them some time. And don't do it like 1 hour on a Friday. Like, if you want to give an organization some time, really set a strict schedule and give them enough time to help them. So come in with a serious commitment. Otherwise, I think it can be quite hard for them to manage that. We've had that a few times where people have tried to help us, and it can sometimes be more of a burden if the person doesn't dedicate like a big chunk of time and effort to it as well. Now, it doesn't need to be a lot, maybe a day a week. If you really consistently do it and you scope out something concrete you want to do with them, so like there's an end goal to the project that you would work on together, I think that's a really good way to start. Look at what's local to you. If there are no organizations, then I think you need to start looking at what you can do yourself. And I think that's too long of an answer for this video, but that's something that we are looking to bring you some actual education from conservation biologists on that topic, on how you could approach that. So I hope that answers your question. So we've had another question, which is one that has been with me in the past, that I've thought, I think a lot, I'm the first person to ask this question quite frequently, which is around third-party verification. How can people verify our work? And the way we've approached this has been to essentially give you GPS coordinates of the project areas so you can visit them yourself. In the case of tree planting, where you can go and see the impact. In the past, we even used to take a photo of every single tree we used to plant, but that was too expensive to keep doing. So now we've settled for 360-degree photos, drone flyovers, biologist walkthrough, and so on of the area where we planted the trees. But it's not third-party verification. And here's where things get tricky. So for things like whether we release like red kites, the birds, the red kite reintroduction, or whether we've helped save certain species of snail on an island in the deserts, it's impossible for us to get a person along to verify as a third party all of those. So there I'm relying on the camera, on essentially showing you these things and reporting them to you, and hoping that, you'll believe that we are not just faking it for the camera. The bird doesn't fly away and then we catch it, or something like that, So we're trying to use YouTube as a transparency tool as well. But for reforestation, which is of course a big chunk of what we do as well, we're looking at the idea of the ultimate third party, which I think isn't some person who tags along and just ticks the box, It's not the gold standard carbon offsetting things. All those schemes have had so many scandals that it's like not even worth getting into that. For us, I think what's really exciting is to use satellites, because the technology is now developing to the point where essentially you can see whether a forest has appeared in an area where it wasn't before. So I think that's going to be a good opportunity for us to essentially give you a tool to evaluate our projects externally and see, hey, Mossy Earth says they've reforested this piece of land, they've planted this many trees, this many members are assigned to this impact for these months. And we're able to see that the trees over the course of the next 3 years grew and covered the land. I mean, 3 years, so here we get to the crux. It takes a while to see the difference. So we're looking into this right now and looking at plots that we've planted like 3, 4, 5 years ago to see what they show, And of course, we look at them on the ground as well to make sure that those plots are thriving, and then we can compare the data. So we're currently looking at a solution. Hopefully we'll be able to launch this in 2023, and you'll be able in the long run to verify our impact, especially of our tree planting projects, by satellite. The rest, I think you will have to trust us to a degree, and we're going to try to report as much as we can. The other thing, of course, which I think is quite important to mention in this whole sort of trust story, is that we try to be accessible. We've created a Discord. I mean, for instance, myself, I'm not there every day answering questions all the time, but I try to jump in sometimes and answer a few questions, and I know other team members do as well. So people can go onto the Discord, which is like a chat app, you know, and we can all just chat there, and they can chat with other members. And so there's this way of like asking questions. And in case you didn't know, you can also book a call with the team. It's hidden deep in the website because sometimes too many people book calls and we get a bit too busy. But yeah, ultimately you can chat with a team member as well. And we're trying to essentially get to the point where, you know, if you really have an important question about a project, you're going to find it easy to reach us and to ask that question and to get an honest and truthful answer about this. And then we're trying to do things like this, you know, this super long video, these reports, yeah, this is all part of the work to try to make everything more transparent and clearer to you in terms of impact. Okay, so it's actually getting darker and darker right now, so I'm running out of time. These are all the questions I managed to get to. I think I included a lot of them. I'm sure I missed some that people have asked, and we'll answer them in the next one. Don't worry about that, because I think we really want to do this every month. Let us know what you think. For us, this is, I think, a nice new way to communicate with our members. So the goal will be to launch our quarterly report every quarter, essentially. So the next one will be in the new year. And then along with that, launch a vote asking some key questions on points that we think we need members, or we need your input to help us sort of get unstuck. And then I will grab everything and review it in videos like this one, answering all the questions that have accumulated for the previous 3 months. So I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been my pleasure to go through all these details with you. And I'd like to wrap up by just saying we've doubled in size this quarter. This has opened up an incredible amount of opportunities for us to do new and exciting things, to create new projects, and to make an impact and make the landscape wilder. And yeah, it's amazing. I have no other words to describe it. We are so thankful for the way this has worked out. I cannot thank you enough for becoming a member and helping us do this work that we're doing, because ultimately it's the only way that we can fund this kind of work. And it's just so exciting to see the type of things that we can do now that we are growing at the speed at which we're growing. So let's get really excited about 2023, because I think there's so many things that we are planning for 2023 that will be, I think you'll like them. I think we'll be making a big impact next year. And yeah, you'll hear all about it in the next membership report. So once again, a huge thank you for being a Mossy Earth member. And if you're not yet a member, I'm surprised you watched this whole video to the end, but you can become a member at mossy.earth and read all about essentially all our projects. So you can read in depth everything that we do, download management plans for all the projects where we've managed to upload them, and so on. So thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time, I've been Duarte. Cheers!